Hey everyone, I'm Melissa from Knitting the Stash, and this is episode 160 something. That's all we know, that's all we need to know. We're up in the 160s. Welcome back to the yarn room. It's lovely to see all of you. I have not been up here as often as I'd like to be, and most of you know it's because I've been writing a book about wool, textiles, and chemistry, which I'm so happy to tell you. It's finally completely drafted. Like, it's sitting in my kitchen, a stack of paper with writing on it, just printed. So Spencer's reading it right now, and I'm hoping to send it out to presses to see what they think in the next couple of weeks. So yeah, that's the big news. The book is written, at least. It might need some revising, but it's written. So as of, what is today? Saturday, July 20th, we have book. Now, for those of you who have written books, you know this. They kind of take up your whole world. So it's kind of the reason I haven't been up here very often. There's like day job, there's like the stuff you love to do, like hobbies and whatnot. And then there's like book writing. And book writing is just like, it's kind of like a balloon. It just takes over your whole life. So there you go. That's what my life has been. I have been doing some knitting and needle felting and things like that to kind of pass a little bit of like stress off in the afternoons, but I haven't been up here as much as I'd like to be, and I'm hoping now that the book writing is done, I can get back to doing some more yarny kind of stuff more regularly. So I'm here. I hope you all are doing well. I have a fun episode for you because I have been dabbling now that the book is drafted. A little more knitting. This is a sweater that's on the needles. We'll talk about that. I know you like to see things mid-construction. We'll talk about some of the things going on over here. Lots of needle felting. I have a new creature for you, and some other fun little needle felting kits that I've been playing around with. And I have been knitting a lot for Shorn V. So for those of you who have been here a long time, it's so nice to hang out with you. And I've enjoyed all the relationships that we've built and everything. And those of you who have been here the longest know that Shorn is a yarn that I create every year and a half, however long it takes the mill to do its thing with the yarn. So we've been busy. Erica Field has been busy designing. I've been busy knitting samples, and so a few of you have been knitting samples too, so you know, test knitting, things like that. This is Shorn V. I'm going to give you a little sneak peek. I've got two different items here. There's a cowl and there's a shawl. Been knitting all of that up. Shorn V, we think the release is going to happen mid-September. So I'm aiming for like September 15th-ish. If you're interested in getting in on Shorn V this year, sign up for the newsletter over at knittingthestash.com. This is a farm to skein yarn. Fleece this year came half from Kathy Capel, who has supplied the fleece for Shorn in the past, and half from Rhonda of You and Us in Nebraska. Mostly Corriedale again. We've got a 3-ply DK weight, 3 different colors: gray, brown kind of black, and I'd say brown. Gray, brown, and creamy kind of natural white. So 3 different colors, exciting possibilities for color work as Erica has worked up for us in 2 patterns. So there'll be kits. All the fun stuff is happening starting in September. So if you want to get on that list, sign up at knittingthestash.com. Newsletter subscribers are always the first to know when Shorn launches because I want you to be able to get your hands on it. YouTube gets the next notification because I do a yarn launch party on here. So either way, if you want to know when Shorn is coming out, that's the best way to find out. But think mid-September for the new yarn. So maybe we should just get on with some yarny adventures, shall we? Let's see. Let's start with sweaters, because that's what this podcast is usually about. Especially if you're new, welcome. It's lovely to see you. Usually we do a lot of sweater garment design, modification type stuff on here. So this episode will be no different. We have a sweater in progress before we get to all the other fun crafty things we've been doing. This is the Onli Blouse by Ankestrick. And I just knit, what's it called? Surf by Ankestrick a couple episodes ago. It's a lovely kind of like stripy, free-flowing, little asymmetrical kind of, it's more like a shirt than a sweater, I'd say. Really interesting. It was the second sweater I had ever knit out of superwash yarn because I'm not a superwash sweater fan, as most of you know. Superwash has its place, don't get me wrong, but in the sweater world, I'm much more of a woolly wool kind of girl. But Ankestrick sometimes designs with these superwash yarns. This one is actually, this is the yarn that's called for in the pattern, and it is a It's Maminoki yarn. It's German yarn, I believe. Yeah, hand dyed in Germany. And it's a blend of 60% wool, which is a superwash wool, 20% silk, and 20% ramie. So it's a little bit of shiny, lustery, happy people yarn, a little bit of superwash wool, which also has a lot of luster, and then a little ramie. So it's a kind of blend. It's been really interesting to work with. It makes sense to me as a yarn that you would use for a summer shirt. Let me grab the bag here. So my yarn is all obviously tied up with the different construction that's going on here. But this is the ramie silk. And you can see it has like a little bit of a fluff fuzz to it. It also has a luster to it, which is interesting to see both at once in a yarn. And I picked this color, which is Mystic Forest. I did have to, I think I had to buy it from Germany. No, I can't remember. I think I found a US supplier. That's what I did. Because you could only, there was like to get all the colors, you had to go buy it from somebody in Germany, but there were a lot of colors available from US stockists. And so I found a US stockist that I liked. I cannot remember who it was. I'm sorry. But I can try to post it on here if I can look it up and figure it out. So that's what the ramie silk looks like. I've been knitting from cakes, obviously. And it's only, the whole sweater is short sleeves. It's not even sleeves. It's like little caps. Like this is it for the sleeve. Like this is it. That's all you get. So 2 skeins of yarn for the whole t-shirt, blouse, whatever you want to call it, which is pretty awesome. I'm so used to knitting big sweaters with lots of sleeves and being on Sleeve Island forever that this one is very different. I mean, once I get down to joining the front and the back, I'm just knitting down and that's it. It's done. It's like, it's one of those sweaters where all your finishing work is finished when you're finished with the sweater, which is so nice. I also haven't knit too many sweaters like that, which, you know, there's something about that that's pretty nice. So this one, I thought I'd show you in process in case you were interested in knitting it, because it's a little bit tricky. I would I recommend it for a beginner? Probably not. I think Ankestrick's patterns are excellent in general. And as I recall, they're fairly size inclusive and interesting constructions. But I think that makes them less likely to be good for beginners because you need to know a little bit to be able to kind of figure out what's going on, especially if you're working out of gauge. So one of the things, I always tell you I'm working out of gauge, which is true. I did a gauge swatch. I liked this fabric. It was already a little bit of a loose gauge for the fabric. And the gauge called for in the pattern was even looser. I was already working on 2.5 US 2.5 needles, which is, where's my millimeters for everyone not in the US? 3 millimeter needles. And I just felt like I liked the fabric well enough. And I think I'm right because I like the way this is working out in the whole kind of garment. So I'm out of gauge as usual. And what that means is with this particular construction, you actually start, I'm not going to give the whole pattern away, but you start with the collar and you're working actually this way. You can see how the collar stitches are horizontal here. So if you're out of gauge and you're out of both stitch gauge and row gauge, you've got to figure out and do some math in the pattern to figure out how long to actually make your collar before you start flipping around, picking up stitches, doing your short rows, all that kind of stuff. So that's why I would say not totally a beginner pattern. There are also a couple moments in the pattern where even I was like, wait a minute, what am I doing here? Like, how am I? I'm not always someone that reads the pattern through totally. Like, I will look through the whole pattern, but I won't sit there and read line by line often because I don't know about you, but I'm so spatially challenged when it comes to knitting that if I try to read a pattern, sometimes I can't actually figure out what it looks like. Like, it's easier for me if it's in my hands and I'm turning it or I'm picking up the stitches or I'm imagining it as a three-dimensional thing. When it's in my hands, I can do it, but in my head, it's very difficult. So this pattern has a little bit of that where if you were trying to read it ahead of time and you were someone like me, you would be a little bit confused about like, where we were going. You're like, there's a little bit of like trust in this pattern where you just have to kind of be like, we're gonna make it and it's gonna be okay. So you can see that it has some interesting short row shaping up on the tops of the shoulders in both the front and the back. And the back looks pretty plain. This is, I think, about as deep as I'm gonna go before joining, but we'll have to see. I'll try it on to see. It's about 7.5 inches for me, so I had to adjust that a little bit based on the pattern. And then, of course, you're constructing the back panel first, and then you're picking up stitches and constructing the front panels. So you are working short rows up here while you're also working the collar and the front pieces. So if you're a knitter that doesn't like doing like all the things at once, there is a little bit of this where you're like, you're increasing for the front and you're working the collar at the same time. So it's not super tricky, but if you're a total beginner, that's why I say not a total beginner pattern. The other thing I found is that with this particular yarn, because it is the superwash silk rammy blend, you've got like a vegetable fiber, you've got the silk, and you've got the superwash wool. If your tension isn't great, it's going to show. And there's a lot of picking up stitches where if you're off by a little bit, especially on this, I'm trying to turn it here, especially on the collar, if you're off, it's going to show. So I spent a good bit of time when I was picking up the stitches in certain locations, over here where the sleeve cap is, and then up here where the collar is, really trying to make sure that I was lining those stitches up as best as I possibly could. Usually when you pick up stitches in this particular place, it's going to be off by like, it has the potential to be off by like half a stitch. And you can see that it's, if you look really closely, you can see like on this part of the sleeve, I guess, it's a little bit, you could see it. You know, there's a seam there because you are picking up stitches. Up here on the collar, there is a seam underneath. I'm pretty happy with the way that I managed to pick up those stitches so that everything was relatively aligned. But I will tell you, the first time I did it, it was a little bit like, ugh, that doesn't look quite right. So again, not super beginner friendly, I would say. Someone who has a little bit of experience working with, if you're working with this particular yarn, if you're, trying to make sure that your picked up stitches align themselves in the right way, because you do have like, it's not quite ribbing, but there is a little bit of an I-cord, or yes, a slip stitched kind of I-cord edge going on and some pearls. So you just want it to all line up pretty nicely. A little tricky, but it's a beautiful design. Like the way that this collar, and it's folded over on itself because that's the way you do the finishing. You tuck it under and sew it in, but you can see it's already wanting to curl in the right ways. And there's a little overlap down here that's very smart for the V-neck. It's just a classy kind of pattern. And I think I am going to put, there's an option for elastic in the sleeve bands. And I think I am going to put the elastic in. I was looking at the project pages, like I always do, and you do too. And it looks like, I mean, I love all the different versions of it, but the versions that I really think capture the essence of the original do have that little bit of pull in on the sleeve. So it's not a balloon sleeve, obviously, because there's no balloon. But if you put the elastic in and it cinches the sleeve just a little bit so that it puffs just a tiny bit around your shoulder, I think that gives like a really nice silhouette to the whole piece. So I am going to add the elastic in toward the end, and I think, I'm not exactly sure, the pattern doesn't totally explain how she did that. I'm not really so much of an elastic person, so my guess is that I'm going to, double this over for the sleeve. You see it's pretty wide. Double it over, put in a very thin piece of elastic, and somehow either sew the ends together or sew the ends so that they're kind of sitting on either side of the sleeve, not fully all the way around, but just kind of sitting to give a little bit of a cinch in this top area, not necessarily underneath the arm. That seems like the most comfortable. If you have advice about elastic, let me know, because I am relatively new to the elastic game, and I would be glad to know of any tips and tricks that you all have for inserting elastic into sleeves, or if you've done it with hems or socks or other skirts, things like that. Let me know. I'd appreciate it. So yeah, this is the Onli blouse. I can't believe both how fast and slow it's going. I'm about, what, like 15, 20 rows from being able to join the two sides together, and then it's just knit straight down. So, I mean, and then there's no sleeves. I've never been a summer top person, but my goodness, the idea of like not knitting sleeves is like 2 thumbs up. I'm down with that. So we'll see how I like this one. I know that Yamagara Bernice just came out with a beautiful lace top. If you haven't seen it yet, go check it out. I got the pattern. I'm not sure if I'll actually end up knitting it or not, but I really love the way that it looks. It's beautiful, and I love Yamagara's patterns. Bernice does a wonderful job with her patterns. I've modified them to no end because that's what I love to do, but they're beautiful. Like, the basic foundation for the pattern is perfect for modification. So yeah, good job on the new pattern, Bernice. Love it. Beautiful. It's in I have it downloaded, and I'm looking forward to kind of checking it out and seeing if I want to knit a second summer top. It could be fun. Who knows? The other thing I've been up to, besides knitting this and all the Shorn V test knits, is I've been working on some needle felting. I think you all know that a lot of us will inevitably pick up other fiber crafts. Am I wrong? I don't think I'm wrong. I know a lot of you are weavers, crocheters, needle felters, tatters, spinners, you know, like we have a multitude of things we can do with fiber. And so I've tried a lot of them. I've tried weaving, I've tried spinning. I like spinning. Weaving wasn't my cup of tea. Needle felting, love it. And I've given you all a little bit of a preview of some things. I did a dragon in the last few episodes, which I absolutely loved, from a class. I learned so much about needle felting from that class, and I've signed up for a couple more classes over at Living Felt. I really like what they're doing over there. They have great classes, well filmed, good instructors. If you're trying to learn about needle felting, they're having a sale right now. So anyway, I got like an elephant class and a dog class. Anyway, just I'm really looking forward to this kind of thing. But I did have a couple of old kits left over from my last World of Wool purchase. You know, my massive 11 kilograms of wool or whatever it was. And one of the kits I got was Hamish. What is he? He's a Highland Cow, and I'm hoping the lights aren't reflecting too much off this thing here. So I've been working on Hamish. Hamish is very adorable. I will say I'm not super, I don't think they're offering these kits anymore, so I think it's okay for me to say this. I've heard other people say this too. The wire in these kits, if you're, it's this kind of wire. It's a very thin green wire rather than the kind of thicker gauge wire that I've used on the dragon. The kit wasn't as great as the other kit. I think part of it was because it's like they use a wool top as opposed to wool roving. The wire wasn't as strong. There are just a few things about this kit, and the instructions weren't like as detailed as I was hoping, so I was kind of on my own to make a cow. Anyway, I made a cow. So I'm going to show you Hamish before he gets all of his fur. All right, so this is Hamish, and Hamish, I've been working on him for, I don't even know, a few weeks now, to get his body proportions the right way, so that when I put the fur all over him, you know, he'll have all the fur in all the right places. Let's put it that way. So I actually used some of my core wool for this. So this is a CVM Rommeldale fleece that I had gifted to me a long time ago, and I've been making it into beautiful bats and then using those bats as my core wool. So underneath all of this brown fur is the core wool, and I'll put in some video here of me creating Hamish and using that core wool as a way to create like all the big shapes, you know, to create his tummy and his chest and his head and his legs and all that kind of stuff. Because I always find that core wool, it's just great. It's like you can use a lot of it, you can kind of mess it up, you don't have to worry about wasting it. It's just, I don't know, I feel like it produces a really nice result. It's also carded, so it's easier to get it to start felting faster than a wool top. So yeah, so the outer layer is wool top that I kind of crunched up. I put it once through the carder, and created kind of like wool that was going in more multiple kind of directions, and then I created a kind of skin, and I would put that skin on him. So like I said, I'll put some of that video in here. I'm pretty happy with his little face. I didn't use glass eyes this time, just to try it out and see what I thought about doing felted eyes. I think the eyes are a little too big. They're very dreamy cow. You know, they're a little bit more like what is it? The dairy cow, Elsie. Do you remember back in like the 30s and 40s, there was a cow for one of the butter companies or one of the milk companies. Oh, is it Borden? Oh, I can't remember. But anyway, this is what Hamish's eyes remind me of, is like those dairy cow eyes, like very, very big and kind of like he should have eyelashes. And I like the way his nose came out and his mouth. I'm pretty happy with those kinds of like facial features. I'm not sure if they're going to come out on the camera. But I'm pretty happy with his face. I would do the horns differently, and I might actually pull these off and do clay horns. This is the way that the booklet calls for, you know, putting in wire and then creating these horns out of felt. I'm not really liking them. They're swiveling, and the felting didn't go very well on the green wire, even though I don't think I actually I didn't use any pipe cleaners on there, so the wool is just on top of the wire, so it's kind of just sitting on there. So I think I'll probably pull the horns off and do clay horns. Some people do clay hooves too, which I just tried the felted hooves for now. I think they're okay. I'm not sure you can see them on the camera. They're all right. But if I were to do more cows in the future, or dogs or elephants or whatever, I think I might do a little more of the clay kind of stuff for things like hooves and horns and whatnot. I did that with the dragon. I was pretty happy with it. The clay isn't super expensive or hard to work with or anything like that, and you can just, it's safe enough, you can pop it in your oven at home and make all the little things. So yeah, so this is Hamish, and hopefully I've put some video in here of me creating him so that you can get a sense of how the whole process worked. And on the next episode, I will show you Hamish with all of his fluff. Yeah, I think I'm pretty happy with the proportions, especially for like my first, it's not my first quadruped because the dragon was quadrupedal, but you know, it's like my first kind of quasi-realistic. It doesn't look like a cow, but it's close, you know, as far as like trying something. I'm not too upset with the proportions, how he came out. So yeah, I'll show you Hamish next time all furred up. Plus I think, and you tell me, those of you who have seen Millie, we have 2 dogs, Tink and Millie. Millie is very furry. Millie reminds me of a Highland cow, so I'm thinking if I can get Hamish to look pretty good, I could probably get Millie, I could do like a replica of Millie, which would be hilarious. So that might be the way that we're going with this. The other felting I've been doing is a company sent me a little felting kit to share with y'all. So this is a starter kit that has a bunch of succulents in it. I'll show you the, comes with a booklet, an instructional booklet, and you know, it actually comes with a lot of gauge 38 and 40 needles with little finger protectors, lots of wool, kind of surprising how much wool there's actually in here, and a little pad to kind of work on. It makes 9 different plants, so these are the plants. I'm hoping the lights won't shine too brightly on them. They're really quite adorable, and a lot of needle felting, you know, is all about these animals, or you know, people do all kinds of things. They do humans, they do tons of different things, but I'm interested, I'm intrigued by the idea of doing plants. So I've been working on a couple of the succulents. This was my favorite, little mushroom succulent. So in the kit you learn how to make the pot, which is cool because you learn how to make a sphere and kind of dampen down the upper portion of it so that it will look like a pot. And then you're learning all these different shapes. So things like the cylinders are like the cones for the bottom of the mushrooms, the cones for the top, how to, you know, overfelt or cover your core wool with different colors on top, little bits of leaves, things like that. It's a really fun kit to do all these little plants with, and they really are literally like that big. So if you're looking for like a smaller needle felting, like you're like, I'd like to needle felt, but I'm not into making a big cow or a dragon. These are kind of cute, and they're just great. They would be fun to like put around the house. So the kit comes with an interesting, it's like a wool pad. I've been using foam for a lot of my needle felting, especially like the 2-dimensional needle felting. But this little gray pad is really useful for a couple of different things. So it's like really useful if you're trying to make more precise like the leaves for these little mushrooms. I know I used the wool felting pad that it came with. It's just a little sturdier and it gives you a little more resistance when you're working with the needles to create something that's a little smaller. But yeah, it's a really neat kit, and I was happy to get it and kind of check it out. I'm going to make some more succulents because I think succulents are cute. They have a lot of different colors, and yeah, it's just kind of fun. So we're working on that. And we took a trip. We took a trip out to the Restful Ewe Bed and Breakfast, which is across the lake from me. We're in New York, Cayuga Lake, over in King's Ferry. There is this bed and breakfast that my friend Beth told me about because her daughter got married. She stayed at the bed and breakfast over there. I was like, oh, and she's like, and she has sheep. That's why it's the Restful Ewe. So she had the sheep. This is Nancy. She had the sheep when we got to talking for, I think she said 25 years, something like that. So she is a very experienced shepherdess, beautiful flock of Corriedales. There's a little bit of Frisian mixed in there, but the sheep were so beautiful. They all had little baby lambs this time of year. Everybody looked really healthy and happy. They were out on open pasture. The bed and breakfast is beautiful. It has like a couple of really old barns, and we went in one where they were doing hay storage, and it just smelled like the freshest, the most delicious like barn hay smell. It was like, there's something about going to a really well-kept place with a well-kept flock that just always makes me very, very happy. So Nancy said the bed and breakfast is actually pretty new. I think she actually said they were starting it in 2020. So right around the time of the pandemic. But we got to go out there because Beth told me that her daughter Amy, when she was staying out there for the wedding, got to take a couple of fleece home. So I was like, oh, fleece. And it turns out Nancy used to take the fleece to the Finger Lakes wool pool. And I've been writing this book and looking at wool pools and things like that. And wool pools are pretty interesting, and they're a little hit and miss, especially around here, it seems like. So the wool pool hasn't been happening for the last year or two, or it happened once, but not mostly during the pandemic. Anyway, she had some fleece left over. So we went into the fleece barn, and I think we ended up taking home not one or two, but 7 fleece. So I'm pretty excited to check them out. They're from this last year's shearing, so back in March. And I have them in, Spencer was kind enough to donate part of his box barn loft to the fleece. We have to get the skirting table back out. The skirting table was disassembled once again. I don't know why. It's like every once in a while I leave Spencer alone with the skirting table and it just disappears. So we got to rebuild the skirting table hopefully this weekend so I can throw the fleece out and have a good look at them. But we got some fleece, and I think I just kind of want to make them into some roving. Maybe put it in the shop, maybe use it for core wool, so we'll see how that goes. But I just really want to look at the fleece. I haven't had a chance to get a good look at them yet because we were kind of piling them into bags, and now they're back home, but I can't skirt them. So I'm like, where's my fleece? Yeah, but it was a really awesome visit, and Nancy and her husband, I think his name was Dave, if I got it right, wonderful people. I would highly recommend their little bed and breakfast. It's adorable, and you get to hang out with sheep. I mean, like, what better bed and breakfast could there possibly be than to go and stay where there's a flock of sheep? I can't think of one. So maybe if you're into like chickens, if they had like a flock of chickens, that would be great. But for me, it's sheep. So yeah, I think that's the extent of the last couple of weeks. I have a little giveaway for you, for anyone who's watched this long. Since I've been talking so much about needle felting here and about how it doesn't take much to get started, I have a little needle felting kit here that was gifted to me. Actually, it was a little gift for my birthday, and I'm not going to use it because I have so many other little kits to work on. So this is Hummingbird Wool Pets, and I just want to give it to one of you all. So why don't you leave me a comment below? I'd love to know what other crafts you work on. If you're weaving, spinning, tatting, needle felting, crocheting, whatever you're doing, I'd love to know. And if you're interested in having me send you a little hummingbird kit so that you can get started with needle felting, I would love to. It includes the wool, some needles, I think the only thing it doesn't include is a little foam block, but you can usually pick up a foam block, you know, even from the stuff that comes in the mail. Sometimes there's foam in there. Yeah, foam blocks aren't too hard to find. So this would be a good little starter kit for you. Yeah, leave me a comment, let me know, and I will send that off to one of you in a couple weeks' time. So that's it for this episode. I want to thank the podcast producers, especially for July, since I haven't been up here podcasting as much. And that is Lenore, Jennifer, Rose, Kendra, and Nargis. Thank you so much for supporting the podcast. And yeah, head on over to knittingthestash.com if you need any other info. I always post show notes here below in the description. And otherwise, I will see you all next time. Take care. Bye-bye. So we ended up with 7 bags full. Like, what is this? Yes, sir, 3 bags full. We got 7 bags full. They're probably about 8 to 10 pounds each. Corriedale, some Corriedale mixed with Frisian. I just was looking it over. It's beautiful wool. Needs to be skirted, needs to be sorted, but it's looking like we're gonna have some yarn.